days before she's gone, a mother's final lesson. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our new videos. It is quick, free, and it truly helps us continue bringing you more dramatic stories that touch the heart. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. In a quiet neighborhood just outside Seoul, the hum of a hospital hallway faded into the sound of rain against glass. Inside a small consultation room, Ae-soon sat very still. The fluorescent light above her buzzed softly. Her hands rested on her knees, fingers trembling only slightly as the doctor spoke the words no one ever wants to hear. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer, he said gently. Without treatment, maybe 7 months with treatment, perhaps a little longer. She did not cry. She only nodded, eyes unfocused, as if the words were dissolving into the air before they could reach her heart. 7 months. The number echoed, hollow and sharp, inside her chest. That evening, the sun was already gone when she unlocked her front door. A voice called from the kitchen, warm and childlike. "Mom, look what I made." "Yetai kunt." In-gyu, her 30-year-old son, stood proudly by the counter, holding a sandwich with uneven slices of bread and a smear of strawberry jam on the edge. His wide smile filled the room with light. "It is perfect," Ae-soon said softly, placing her hand on his cheek. "The boy know." The man laughed like a child. His world was simple, full of routines and repetition. He could count, draw, hum the same song every night before bed, but he could not live alone. As he ate his sandwich, Ae-soon leaned against the kitchen doorway and watched him. Her mind was already running ahead, beyond the calendar, beyond her own heartbeat. Who would remind him to brush his teeth? Who would cook his meals? Who would be there when he woke up, frightened at 2 in the morning? Later, after he fell asleep, she sat at the small table and wrote in a notebook. Things In-gyu must learn. Turn off the stove after cooking. Fold laundry. Call Mrs. Kim next door, if you are scared. Remember to eat breakfast. Her handwriting was shaky. She underlined the last line twice, then looked at the clock. 11:07 p.m. The second hand ticked softly, each sound pulling her closer to the truth. Outside, thunder rolled through the night. She closed her eyes and whispered, 7 months I will make them count. The next morning, Ae-soon woke before dawn. The house was quiet except for the rhythmic ticking of the old alarm clock on her bedside table. She reached out and set it carefully, then walked to her son's room. In-gyu was still asleep, one hand clutching his stuffed bear, the other resting over his chest. His breath came slow and even. Ae-soon knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "My sweet boy," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "I will teach you everything I can. So when the day comes that you wake up and I am not here, you will know what to do." The clock chimed once in the distance. Ae-soon straightened her back and smiled through the weight in her chest. The story of her remaining days had already begun. The next morning came gray and heavy with mist. Ae-soon stood by the kitchen window, pouring water into a small pot for tea. The air outside smelled of damp earth and fallen leaves. In-gyu shuffled into the room, his hair messy, his t-shirt wrinkled. "Good morning, Mom," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Good morning, my boy," she replied gently. "Come sit. We will make breakfast together today." He hesitated for a moment. Usually she prepared everything for him, but today she handed him the spatula. "You try first," she said. In-gyu frowned, confused. "Me? What if I burn it? Then we make another one." Ae-soon smiled. "That is how we learn." The eggs sizzled in the pan. He poked them too early, the yolks breaking apart, but she only nodded in approval. "Good. See? You can do it." It took 30 minutes to finish what normally took 10. The kitchen smelled of oil and smoke, and the counter was a mess. Yet when he placed the plate in front of her, slightly burned but warm, she ate it all. When breakfast was done, Ae-soon wiped her hands on a towel and wrote another note in her notebook. Lesson 1. Cook with patience. She knew she could not tell him about her illness. He would not understand. Instead, she decided to teach by living, one day at a time. That afternoon, she walked to the neighborhood store with him. The sky was overcast, and the sidewalks were slick with rainwater. As they walked, she said softly, "Do you know where to buy eggs when we run out?" "Yes, the corner store," he answered proudly. "Good. And if I am not here one morning, you will go there alone, all right?" He stopped walking. Why would you not be here? A soon took a breath. Sometimes moms have to visit places for a long time. But I will always come back in your heart, lad. He seemed to think for a moment, then nodded, though his eyes looked uncertain. She squeezed his hand tighter. When they reached the store, Mrs. Kim, the owner, waved. Morning, A-soon. Hello, Ingyu. A-soon smiled back. Mrs. Kim, if Ingyu ever comes here alone, please help him, all right? Miss Kim's face softened. Of course. He is like family. Later that day, A-soon felt a sharp pain in her back as she carried the grocery bags. She paused by the gate, steadying herself, forcing a calm expression before her son could notice. Inside, she sat down slowly, her breath shallow. The illness was already taking pieces of her strength. That night, as rain tapped gently against the windows, she spoke again to her son. Ingyu, from tomorrow, you will learn how to do laundry. Laundry? He asked, surprised. But you always do it. Yes, but someday you will too, she said with a smile. It is easy once you know. Come, I will show you. She demonstrated step-by-step sorting colors, turning on the machine, measuring detergent. He watched closely, repeating her every move, his expression serious. When the machine began to hum, he grinned. It is working. Yes, A soon said softly. It is working. Later, after he fell asleep, she looked through her notebook again. Lesson 2. Laundry. Lesson 3. Confidence. She paused, then added another line. Lesson 4. Teach him how to ask for help. Yeah? The next morning she invited Mrs. Kim over for tea. If I ever travel, he soon began carefully. Please check on him from time to time. Mrs. Kim nodded, her eyes wet. You do not have to say more. I understand. When A-soon walked her to the door, she saw Ingyu standing by the window watching them. He waved, smiling. The morning sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, lighting his face. She whispered to herself, he will learn. Slowly, but he will. Yungle. And as she turned back inside, she noticed her reflection in the window thin, pale, but calm. For the first time since the diagnosis, she did not feel afraid. She only felt the quiet urgency of a mother racing time, teaching love through ordinary things. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each sound a reminder. The lessons had begun. The days passed with the rhythm of soft routines and small victories. A soon had learned to measure progress not in leaps, but in inches. Every morning began the same way. She would wake before sunrise, listen to the faint ticking of the alarm clock, and breathe through the ache in her chest before calling out to her son. Ingyu, time to wake up, my boy. He would emerge from his room rubbing his eyes, his hair sticking out in every direction. Sometimes he complained, sometimes he laughed, but he always came when she called. That morning, A soon placed a small gift on the table, a silver alarm clock, old but clean. Its ticking sounded steady, like a heartbeat. This will help you, she said. When you hear this sound, it means you must start your day. He tilted his head. But you always wake me up. I know, she smiled, her fingers brushing the clock face. But someday, when I am away, this sound will do it for me. Ingyu frowned, uncertain of her words, but he accepted the clock. It is loud, he said. That means it is alive, she whispered. She began teaching him to read the grocery list she had written. They sat side by side at the small kitchen table, tracing each word with a pen. Eggs. Rice. Milk. Soap. She said slowly. Now you try, he repeated after her, stumbling but proud. When he managed to say all four without looking, she clapped softly. Good job. You are learning faster than I expected. He grinned. You are a good teacher, Mom. Yo. That night, while he slept, A soon added another note in her book. Lesson 5. Independence. Reward with praise. She underlined the word praise. By the end of the week, A soon noticed her energy fading faster. Even walking up the short stairs left her winded, but she refused to let her weakness show. She knew that fear in a child's eyes could undo everything she was trying to build. One afternoon, while she was folding laundry, a sudden wave of nausea hit her. She steadied herself against the washing machine until the dizziness passed. When she looked up, she found Ingyu standing in the doorway, watching her with worry. Mom, are you okay? I am fine, she said, forcing a smile. Just a little tired. He hesitated, then walked over and gently took the laundry from her hands. I can finish, he said softly. She wanted to stop him, his folds were uneven, and he mixed the towels with shirts, but instead she nodded. Thank you, my boy. Lose. Later, she watched him from the living room as he placed each folded piece in a neat pile. His movements were awkward but careful. For the first time, she let herself rest. That evening, she decided to give him a new task, one that mattered more than any household chore. She handed him the phone. If you ever need help, call this number, she said. It is Mrs. Kim. Say your name clearly. She will come. He nodded. I can do that. Good, she said. We will practice tomorrow. Homework. That night, after dinner, they sat together on the couch, watching the flickering light of a small television. A cooking show played, full of laughter and bright colors. Ae-soon leaned back, letting the sound fill the silence between them. Ingyu, she said softly, do you know what courage is? He looked at her, puzzled. Is it like being strong? Sometimes, she said. But real courage is doing something even when you are scared. He thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. Then you are very brave, Mom. Her throat tightened. She wanted to say that he was the brave one, that every new thing he learned was a small act of courage. But she only reached out, taking his hand. Thank you, my boy. When he went to bed, Ae-soon sat at the table once more. The notebook lay open beside the ticking clock. She wrote carefully. Lesson 6. Courage. Teach by example. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing through the thin curtains. Ae-soon looked toward her son's closed door and whispered, he is ready for more. The silver clock ticked on, each beat a promise. It was not loud enough to drown out fear, but it was steady enough to remind her that there was still time to love, to teach, to prepare. The following week, the chill of early winter settled over the small town. The sky stayed pale and colorless, and every breath Ae-soon took felt heavier than the one before. Yet she refused to stop. She had promised herself that every day would hold one more lesson for her son, one more step toward the life he needed to live without her. That morning, she walked with Ingyu to the small park near their house. The air smelled of pine and frost. Children played on the swings, their laughter echoing faintly across the empty benches. Ae-soon carried a paper bag filled with sandwiches and 2 bottles of milk. They sat on their favorite bench, the one closest to the old maple tree. Ingyu, she said softly, handing him a sandwich. You remember how to buy milk at the store, right? He nodded proudly. Yes, I even said thank you. She smiled. Good. Tomorrow you will go alone. I will wait here for you. He froze, halfway through his bite. Alone? Yes, she said gently. It is not far. You can do it. He looked down, his shoulders tense. What if I get lost? You will not. You know the road. And if you forget, ask someone to help. That is what courage looks like. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, I will try. That evening, Ae-soon wrote another line in her notebook. Lesson 7. Trust. Let him walk alone. The next morning, she stood by the gate as Ingyu clutched the small shopping bag and the list she had written in clear block letters. Milk and bread, he repeated. That is right, she said. And what will you say when you pay? Thank you, Godol. Her smile wavered as she watched him disappear down the narrow street. She stayed by the gate long after he was gone, her hands clasped tightly together. Every minute stretched into eternity until she finally saw his familiar figure returning, holding the bag proudly. I did it, Mom, he shouted, his voice full of joy. I remembered everything. She laughed through her tears. I knew you would. Argud. That night, she cooked his favorite soup bean paste with tofu, and they ate together in quiet celebration. But when he fell asleep, Ae-soon sat at the table again, her hand pressed against her ribs. The pain was worse now, sharper, radiating through her back. She gritted her teeth, breathing slowly until it passed. Then she opened her notebook and wrote, Lesson 8. Freedom. Let go with love. The next day she walked with him to the bus stop. A cold wind blew through the street, carrying the sound of distant church bells. She wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck. Mom, where are we going? He asked. To the community center, she said. You will meet some people who can help you if you ever need anything. The staff at the center greeted them warmly. Ae-soon introduced Ingyu to a volunteer named Ji-won, a calm woman with kind eyes. He will be visiting sometimes, Ae-soon explained. Please guide him. Ji-won smiled. Of course. We will take good care of him. On the way home, Ingyu walked silently. Ae-soon looked down at him and said, Do you know why we met those people today? He shrugged. Because you said they are nice? Yes, she said. And because sometimes, even the strongest people need others to lean on. That is what friends are for. He nodded slowly, as if trying to hold on to every word. That night, she placed the silver alarm clock on his nightstand. This will remind you of me, she said. Whenever it rings, it means it is time to start the day, no matter how hard it feels. He touched the clock carefully, his expression serious. When it rings, I will wake up, he said, even if you are not here. Aesoon kissed his forehead. That is my brave boy. Later, when she lay in bed, she listened to the quiet hum of the house. Outside, snow had begun to fall, thin and silent. She knew the time was slipping faster now. Her body was failing, but her son, her reason for everything, was finally beginning to stand. The silver clock ticked softly in the dark, marking the fragile distance between what she had left to teach and what he was finally learning on his own. Winter deepened, and the first snow covered the rooftops like a thin blanket of sugar. Aesoon sat by the window that morning, watching her breath fog against the glass. Her scarf was wrapped tightly around her neck, but her fingers were pale and thin, her joints stiff from the cold. The pain came and went like waves now, some gentle, some sharp enough to steal her breath. Still, she smiled when she heard the familiar sound of footsteps behind her. "Mom," Ingyu said, holding a broom. "Can I clean the snow today?" Aesoon turned to look at him, his face glowing with excitement. "Yes, but wear gloves," she reminded gently. He rushed outside, swinging the broom in wide, clumsy arcs. Snow flew in every direction, landing back on the steps he had already cleared. Aesoon laughed quietly, covering her mouth. For a moment, she forgot the ache in her bones. When he came back in, his cheeks red from the cold, he said proudly, "I made a path, so you will not slip." She reached up and touched his face. "You take good care of me, my boy." 2-1. Later that afternoon, she decided to teach him one more thing, something small but important. She placed a small envelope on the table. "This," she said, "is for bills. When they come in the mail, you put them inside here. Then, on Fridays, you walk to the post office and pay them." He frowned. "That is hard." "It is, but I will show you how once," she said. "After that you can do it." Together they practiced writing his name on a form. His letters were uneven, but his focus was intense. When he finally finished, he looked up at her and grinned. "I did it," he said. "You did," she whispered, fighting back tears. That evening, Aesoon was too tired to cook. She sat at the table, her head resting on her hand. Ingyu noticed and immediately took over. He opened the fridge, pulled out rice, and started the stove, his movements slow but confident. The scent of fried rice filled the kitchen, and Aesoon watched in silence as he plated the food. "Mom," he said shyly, "I made this for you." Her throat tightened. "It smells wonderful," she said, taking a bite. It tasted simple and slightly overcooked, but it was perfect. Later that night, after he went to bed, Aesoon took out her notebook. The pages were almost full now. She turned to the last blank one and wrote, "Lesson 9, Kindness Returns. He is learning to give." She closed the notebook and pressed her hand over it as though sealing her heart inside. The next morning, she woke to a light knocking on her door. It was Mrs. Kim, holding a basket of tangerines. "The market had extras," she said with a warm smile, "and your boy helped me carry them home yesterday." Aesoon's eyes softened. "He did?" "Yes." Miss Kim nodded. He insisted. After the neighbor left, Aesoon sat in silence for a long moment, the sunlight spilling across her face. Her son was changing slowly, quietly, beautifully. That evening, she called him into the living room. "Come here, my boy," she said, patting the seat beside her. He sat down, looking curious. "What is it?" She placed her hand over his. "You are doing so well. You are brave, kind, and stronger than you think. I want you to promise me something." He nodded. "Anything, Mom. Promise me that you will keep trying no matter what happens. Promise that you will take care of yourself." "I promise," he said firmly. She smiled. "Good. That is all a mother needs to hear." That night, after he had gone to bed, Aesoon stood at his door for a long time, watching him sleep. The soft ticking of the alarm clock filled the room. Her breathing grew shallow, but her expression stayed calm. She whispered, "You are ready." Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, the small silver clock kept ticking steady, loyal, alive, marking not the time that was running out, but the love that would remain after she was gone. A week later, the quiet rhythm of their home began to change. A soon woke one morning to a strange heaviness in her chest. The pain was deeper now, no longer sharp but constant, like something pressing from the inside. She moved slowly, careful not to wake her son, and poured herself a glass of water. Her hands shook as she lifted it. When she looked into the mirror above the sink, she barely recognized the face staring back. Her skin had lost its color, her eyes sunken yet still filled with light. She touched her cheek gently and whispered to her reflection, "Not yet. I still have things to do." That afternoon, she visited the hospital for her checkup. The nurse spoke kindly, but the doctor's voice was quiet and deliberate. "The cancer has spread," he said. "You should rest now. There is not much time left." Kumul. Asun simply nodded. She had expected it. On the way home, she stopped by the small bakery near the bus stop and bought 2 red bean buns, her son's favorite. The clerk smiled as she handed her the bag. "For your boy again?" Asun smiled faintly. "Yes, always for him." When she returned home, Ingyu was waiting by the window, watching the street. "You were gone so long," he said. "I was worried." She touched his arm softly. "I am here now. Look what I brought." Ho! His eyes lit up when he saw the buns. "You are the best, Mom." That evening they ate together as usual, but Asun could feel her strength fading faster. After dinner she went to her room, sat on the bed and opened her notebook one more time. Her handwriting trembled slightly as she wrote, "Time is shorter than I thought. Begin the final lessons tomorrow." The next morning, she woke earlier than usual. She could hear the faint ticking of the silver clock in her son's room. The sound comforted her. She walked into the kitchen, started the kettle, and then sat down at the table, waiting for Ingyu to wake up. When he came in, yawning, she smiled. "Good morning, my boy. Today, I will teach you something very important." He sat across from her. "What is it?" "How to say goodbye," she said quietly. He frowned. "Goodbye? But you are not going anywhere." She took his hands in hers. "Everyone goes somewhere, someday. It is part of life. When that time comes, you must remember that love does not leave. It stays here." She pressed his hand over his heart. "Do you understand?" He hesitated, eyes full of confusion. "I do not want to say goodbye." "Neither do I," she said softly. "That is why we will practice now. We will say goodbye, and then we will say see you soon. That way, it will not feel so hard." He looked down at their hands, then nodded slowly. "Goodbye, Mom," he whispered. She smiled through her tears. "See you soon, my love." That night, after he went to bed, Asun folded her notebook and placed it on the shelf beside the alarm clock. She looked around the small room that had held their entire world, the photos on the wall, the smell of rice still lingering in the air, the faint warmth of the heater. Everything felt precious, even the silence. Outside, the moon hung low, glowing over the snow-covered street. She walked to her son's room and stood in the doorway for a long time, listening to his steady breathing. Her hand brushed the doorframe and she whispered, "You did well today. You are ready, my boy." Then she turned and went back to her room. Her body ached, but her heart felt lighter than it had in months. She lay down, closed her eyes, and listened to the ticking of the clock, echoing faintly through the walls. Each sound was a heartbeat, a reminder that she had done everything she could. For the first time, she allowed herself to rest completely, not out of weakness, but out of peace. The next morning, the sky was a pale gray, and the house was still. Asun tried to sit up, but her body refused to obey. Her arms trembled, and the effort left her breathless. The pain had moved into her lungs now, every inhale shallow and sharp. She could hear Ingyu humming in the kitchen, the same song he always sang while washing dishes. She called softly, "Ingyu, Holnan." He appeared in the doorway holding a towel. His face brightened when he saw her awake. "Good morning, Mom. I made toast." She smiled weakly. "That is wonderful, my boy. Come here." He walked over, sitting beside her on the edge of the bed. Soon reached up, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Do you remember what we talked about yesterday?" "Holnan." He nodded slowly, saying goodbye. "Yes," she whispered. "But today, I want to teach you one last thing, how to be brave when someone you love is gone." His eyes filled with confusion. "Are you leaving?" She tried to shake her head, but the motion made her dizzy. "Not yet, but maybe soon. When that day comes, I need you to remember everything we practiced. Eat breakfast, go for your walk, Smile at people. The world will still need your kindness. Tears welled in his eyes. I cannot do that without you. You can, she said firmly. You already are. He looked down, his lip trembling. I am scared. I know, Asun whispered. I am scared too, but fear is not the end. It just means you care. She reached for his hand and pressed it to her chest. Do you feel my heartbeat? He nodded. When it stops one day, remember it is still here. She tapped his chest gently. Inside you. He began to cry, the sound raw and aching. She pulled him closer, her arms weak, but full of love. My sweet boy, she said, her voice breaking. I am so proud of you. You made my life beautiful. He held her tightly. I will not forget. She smiled through the tears that filled her eyes. That is all I need to hear. The clock on the bedside table ticked softly, marking the quiet seconds between their words. Asun's breathing grew slower, but her gaze never left her son's face. Listen to me, she said, barely above a whisper. When you wake up, and I am not here, do not be afraid. Open the curtains. Let the sun in. Start your day. That will be our promise. He nodded, still clutching her hand. I promise, Mom. She closed her eyes, her thumb brushing across his knuckles one last time. Good, she breathed. Then I can rest. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, silent, endless. Inside, the only sound was the steady ticking of the silver clock, counting the final moments of a love that had never known fear. Morning arrived quietly. The first light of dawn slipped through the thin curtains, painting the room in pale gold. The air was still. The silver clock on the nightstand ticked with gentle precision, its rhythm slow and even, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Ingyu stirred awake to the sound of the alarm. The clock rang 7 times, its chime echoing softly through the room. He rubbed his eyes, then sat up, glancing toward his mother's bed. Mom, he called softly. There was no answer. Asun lay perfectly still, her face calm, her lips curved into the faintest smile. The blanket rose just enough to cover her chest, her hands folded neatly as though she had simply fallen asleep. Mom, he said again, his voice trembling. He stood beside her, unsure of what to do. It is morning. Time to wake up. He waited. The silence grew heavy, pressing down on the walls of the small house. Then, as the truth began to sink in, his breathing quickened. He shook her shoulder gently, then harder. Mom, he whispered, his voice cracking. Please wake up. Still nothing. The sound of the clock filled the room, steady and merciless. For a long moment, Ingyu stood frozen, unable to move or speak. His mother's final words echoed in his mind. When you wake up and I am not here, open the curtains. Let the sun in. Start your day. With trembling hands, he turned toward the window. The curtain fabric felt rough beneath his fingers. He hesitated, then slowly pulled it open. Light spilled into the room, soft and golden. Dust floated in the beams like tiny stars. The sunlight touched his mother's face, warming her pale skin. She looked peaceful, as if she were dreaming of something gentle. Ingyu wiped his tears with the back of his hand. He walked to the kitchen, moving as she had taught him. He took out rice, measured water, and started the stove. His movements were slow but sure. When the rice began to boil, he whispered to himself, Lesson 1. Cook with patience. He set the table for 2 out of habit, then caught himself. After a moment, he moved one bowl away, leaving only his. Sitting down, he bowed his head. Mom, he said quietly, I am eating breakfast. I did what you said. Outside, a soft breeze stirred the snow on the windowsill. The house felt both empty and full at the same time, quiet, but alive with everything she had left behind. When he finished his meal, he walked back to her room, holding the small silver clock. He placed it carefully on the nightstand beside her, then whispered, I heard it ring, Mom. I woke up. I remembered. The ticking continued, unwavering, filling the silence that her voice had left behind. As the morning light grew brighter, Ingyu stood by her side, no longer crying. There was grief in his eyes, but also something else, something steady, like peace. The promise had been kept. The alarm had rung 7 times, and in that quiet house, love was still teaching him how to begin each day. Spring came slowly that year. The snow melted into quiet streams along the road, and the air began to carry the scent of wet soil and new grass. The little house where Asun and her son had lived looked almost the same, except for the open windows that now let in the morning light. Each day began the same way. The silver clock would ring, its chime gentle but firm, and In-gyu would rise. He brushed his teeth, folded his blanket, and made breakfast just as she had shown him. He sometimes burned the rice or spilled water on the counter, but he never gave up. He always smiled at the end and said softly, "Mom, I did it again." Mrs. Kim stopped by often. She brought groceries and sometimes sat with him for tea. One morning she found him reading from the notebook his mother had left behind. The pages were worn at the edges, the ink slightly faded, but every word was clear. Lesson 1. Cook with patience, he read aloud. Lesson 2. Laundry. Lesson 3. Confidence. Mrs. Kim placed her hand on his shoulder. "Your mother would be proud," she said. He nodded, his eyes warm. "She is here," he said, pointing to his chest. "She told me so." In-gyu had started visiting the community center twice a week. Ji-won, the volunteer, helped him with small jobs sorting mail, watering plants, greeting visitors. He worked slowly, but with care. The staff began to look forward to his smile, his quiet good morning, his gentle way of making people laugh without meaning to. One afternoon, Ji-won handed him a framed picture. Inside was a photograph of A-soon sitting under the maple tree at the park, her son beside her, both smiling at the camera. "We found this in the donation box," she said. "Someone must have placed it there by mistake." He held the frame carefully, his fingers tracing her face. "Not a mistake," he said softly. "It came back because she wanted me to have it." That evening, he hung the photo above the small table in the living room. Beneath it, on the shelf, sat the silver clock and the notebook. The clock still ticked faithfully, its sound now familiar and comforting. Before going to bed, he opened the window and looked at the stars. "Good night, Mom," he whispered. "I opened the curtains today. I let the sun in." The night air brushed against his face like a soft hand. Somewhere, a faint breeze moved the pages of the notebook, turning them until they rested on the last line his mother had written. Lesson 9. Kindness returns. He smiled, closed the notebook, and turned off the light. The house settled into silence, but it was not an empty silence. It was the kind that holds warmth, the kind that keeps love alive in the smallest sounds, the ticking of a clock, the rustle of curtains, the breath of someone who finally learned how to live. And so, 7 months after her diagnosis, A-soon's final lesson continued not through words, but through the steady, ordinary courage of her son, who woke each morning to the sound of time and to the quiet promise that